it turned to gold.
Okay, let's look today at not modulation, but tonicization that's sort of intermediate between a secondary dominant and full modulation. Okay, so we're dealing with tonicization, and it's a continuum, as we mentioned before. Secondary dominants are way over here as something that just involves one chord tonicizing another. Pretty simple. We've talked about modulation most recently. And what qualifies as a modulation? What makes it move from this short, simple thing to something more?
PXC cadence and then something other than the
Good, a cadence. Now, it doesn't have to be PXC necessarily, but you cadence in the new key. Good. And then you were going to say? We use a pivot to help explain how we get there smoothly, and so that becomes part of it too. That's good, yeah. So modulation gets more weight, either because, it can be because you just live there so long you believe in it, but the longer you're there, the more likely you're out of cadence in it, so they sort of go hand in hand. But you convert, so to speak, to the new key and hear it as your tonic because you've emphasized it in some way. Length can play a factor, but we've been emphasizing the fact that you cadence in it. Now, sometimes you won't cadence, but you will still have more than just 5-1 in that key. So we might have 2-5-1. Okay, now you've given it not just its dominant, not just the secondary dominant, but you've given it, in a sense, a secondary predominant too. So you've got a 2-5-1 kind of progression in whatever key that might be. Maybe, say if we were in C, you would say, okay, this right here is in A, let's say. This is all of 6. So you might be trucking along in a larger context that is C. You come from your 1 and you do this routine, and then you cadence over here. Maybe that's some sort of authentic cadence at the end. So now it's not just tonicizing 6, but you've added a predominant in there as well. What would that be? It's a B half diminished 7 chord. And then you're going to tonicize your A minor over here. And so your 5 is?
E.
E major. Or let's make it a 7 so it sort of fits them. Okay, so we would be coming from a C major chord, and then these we would all be able to interpret as of 6. It's like we're taking the of 6 sign and we're tipping it to include, we're sort of gradually moving it until it includes, it's this way now, horizontal, so that it can include, in this case, 2, 5, 1. So we're thinking of all this in terms of 6. See how that works? More substantive than this, but not quite as weighty as the modulation. It's intermediate. This is often called a tonal area because it involves more than just a couple chords, but has a little more substance than that. You can always use the word tonicization for it because you are tonicizing. You're turning something into your temporary tonic, but you're not really, it's not your home. It's somewhere else. So this is going to be a big thing for us because we're dealing with bridges. And bridges love to do something new. They sound different. And one of the ways they can sound different, and in contrast to all the stuff you've been hearing, is by moving away to some other key. They tend to be unstable too, so it's really handy to have this technique, the tonal area, at your disposal, because then you can do a lot of feints toward this key, toward that, toward this, and never really settle into anything. Now, at the end, you know where you're headed, right? Bridges, where do they go harmonically? They're setting up a return to 1, so 5 is what we want. So it's natural to have a leading tone to 5, and you might be tempted to just stop there. But after today, you should ask one more question. I see a leading tone, so we've got a leading tone to 5. Here's my 5, my goal, so this is my bridge. make 5 my goal. So there's probably a leading tone to that 5 and a secondary dominant. But now, don't just stop there. Back up and see, do I have a 4-5-1 or 6-5-1, or more common is 2-5-1. You could do it like this too. See what I'm doing? Those two of that 5, check that out because it happens so much. Now you could say that's a cadence in the new key, so you could actually call that a modulation. But now you have this option to show it as not quite as hefty as that. You know, a lot of times this makes total sense because they'll put a 7 on there. See what I mean by that? There's no way you're going to hear that as tonic, so you don't want to use modulation there. It's obviously a half cadence in the home key, but you do have predominant, dominant tonic in the 5. So this is a perfect place for you to plug in this new idea of the tonal area. At the end of your bridge, tonicize the 5, not just with its dominant, but with a predominant, dominant tonic progression in that key. Why can you not hear this as tonic? Why could you not use modulation here and say, oh, we're in the key of 5?
Because there's a 7 on it?
Right, and it's not just any 7. What makes the difference?
It's a dominant 7.
Dominant 7's good. So if we had a 1-7 in the key of the dominant,
It would be pulling somewhere.
it would be a major 7. There's a big difference between those two. A dominant 7, you can't settle on it. But you can end with a major 7, right? So I could do some big fat dominant and go there, and that's still tonic. You know that it's tonic with that major 7 sound. But if I go to there, now I gotta pull on, I'm gonna go somewhere else, right? I'm gonna go there, it's gonna pull me forward. So major 7 means one thing. If it were that, I could call it a modulation. But if I get the dominant 7 sound, it's gonna sound like a half cadence no matter what. It's gonna feel unstable in a way that a major 7th wouldn't. So keep that in mind.
What
The
about
difference
the
between major
2-5-1? Like, why does that not sound like tonic over there?
Well, this is still the issue of, you mean, why?
No, not that. Over to the left. Your other thing. Your other 2-5-1.
Oh, now
Is it 'cause it's minor?
this isn't necessarily a cadence, right? So this would be 2 diminished, 5-7 maybe, and then to 1, in the key of 6.
Yeah, but to the
And-
ear.
Yeah, well, if it sounds like a cadence, then you could do a modulation there. But if it doesn't come at the end, the issue here was this was the end of the bridge coming here. But this is probably something that you'll find in the middle of the bridge, and it won't sound like a cadence. And if it doesn't, then you use this instead of modulation. The whole issue is, did you hear a cadence? You see
Right.
the issue?
But as a writer, how do you make it sound like a cadence, and how do you make it not sound like a
Oh, I see, right. Some of it has to do with pacing of it.
Like what comes
And,
after it and before it?
Where it comes, if it's too early, if it's
Okay.
one of the first 3 chords out, then you're not going to hear it as a cadence at all.
Sometimes you just gotta use your ear and see what works.
Yeah, and a lot of time it has to do with the melodic activity going through it. There are all sorts of things that when we get into form, we will deal head on with. But melodic activity, instability in the way you approach it can be an issue too. Right, if I invert one of these guys, this or that, that's going to undermine it too. But in this style, it's mainly going to be the melodic context. What's going on up here can keep the ball rolling or not. It really, the melody controls a lot about how you hear it. Okay, any questions about just this concept? Did I leave any loose ends for you? Any questions? Now we got to see how it works, right? We got to see what this in a real musical context. All right, look at Blue Moon that you were listening to a minute ago. You can. I just ripped those two apart because I want to have them side by side here. We're going to make the keyboard. This one I really worked out for you, and then the next one I'd like you to try your hand at it. So let's start here with the bridge from Blue Moon. Okay, now at the first we just do 4-5-1 twice. Notice that the bridge here is starting off tonic. This happens quite a bit. You want the bridge to sound new. So if you start on a tonic chord, well, that's kind of old hat. So what he does, and what so many times we get at the beginning of the bridge, is something that would normally be kind of a predominant sort of chord. You might get a 4, you might get a 2, you might get a 6. Those are all very common. Even a flat 6. So if you're in a major context, a flat 6 is this, which is surprising because I'm just playing in C right there, but if you're in C, you expect A minor for your 6, but I was playing A flat. You would get that in C minor, but you would not get that in major. So if I get an A flat chord in the context of C major, I'm going to call that flat 6. I had to borrow it. I had to take it in from C minor, because otherwise how am I going to get an A flat, right? So that also happens at the beginning of bridges. But the point is, it sounds fresh. It sounds new, and that's what you want for a bridge. You want a new sound to kick it off, and that's exactly what he does. So can we start? You hear the added 6 in there in the tune, and then there suddenly appears before me the only one my arms will ever hold. And then, okay, now next page. I heard somebody. Oh, isn't that great? What's he doing? It's still 4, but it's minor. How cool. Okay, so listen to what he does. Somebody whisper, please adore me. And when I looked, the moon had turned to and so on, okay? So, notice the tonicizations that happen on that second page. I heard somebody, it starts as a 4, but see how I've reinterpreted it? This works as 2-5-1, starting right there, in the key of G flat. So that's your tonic, and you hear how this is 2 minor, so 2 is going to fit now. By using a minor 4, he gets the minor quality that he needs for it to sound like a 2 chord, right? If you're in a major key, 2 is minor, makes sense? So here we go, 2, 5, that's quite a bit of extra stuff in there. You're the 9th needing to come down in that spot. That's nice, isn't it? And then he goes there. So he tonicized G flat by going 2-5-1 for adore me. And when I now check this out, isn't that beautiful? It's a cadential 6-4. So in retrospect, now the G flat has changed meaning. That G flat is like 6 in D flat. Are you with me there? That's cool, isn't it? So now we have 6-5-1. Now there's a cadential 6-4 too. That's kind of nice. Okay, so there's my G flat. Take it to here, and I'm on the dominant, but it's going to take a little while to get the full dominant in. There it is. Hear it? Dominant 7th sound, and you know where you are. You are in the resolve here. But listen, there's some extra stuff. See the marks below the score? There's a 9 and an 8. There's quite a bit of dissonance there, needing resolution. Do you see those resolutions? There's the C and a D flat needing to go there, and that's where the real chord emerges. Okay, now you got the full dominant 7th. But you see what he did with the 7th in there? It pushes you right on. You don't really sit on that dominant. It pushes you on to the next thing. So do the same thing when you write your bridge. Remember what we've noticed. Off tonic beginning. Start on something that's not tonic. Often a 4, a 2, or a 6. That's nice. And notice how many times, even though he runs that progression twice at the beginning, 4-5-1, then you start to explore and go to new places. So he changes the 4, makes it minor, and then can go 2-5-1 and go somewhere new. And then he takes that very thing, the new 1, makes it a flat 6 and goes flat 6, 5-1. for the dominant. So now he gets to the dominant, just like we had talked about, is where you want to go. The goal, the harmonic goal of your bridge is 5. So that's what he does, and he gets you there in a really powerful way with that flat 6, 5, 1 progression. So those are 2 progressions where you get a predominant, dominant tonic. Okay, so on your sheet, write predominant, dominant tonic underneath each one of those. I haven't put functions, but it's in the new key, but it is a predominant, dominant tonic progression. And you should write that twice because that happens in 2 different keys.
Where did you want to see?
Right here where those 2 5 1. So first you're going to do it in G flat, predominant, dominant tonic. And then you're going to do the same thing, predominant, dominant tonic, in B flat, which is the dominant here. And when that happens, this is not a modulation, it's a tonicization or a tonal area. We have 2 tonal areas. We have a part of this phrase that's in G flat, and we have a chunk of it that's in B flat. So you can either talk about the part of the phrase as the tonal area, or you could think of those 2 keys as your tonal area. Okay, so you could use the word either way. Not a modulation, but a tonal area going on.
It's like this part, well, technically all of it, but that specific spot.
Yeah, that and that is another. So there are 2 tonal areas here.
So they're 2 separate.
Yeah, and they overlap, of course, because of the dual meaning. See the pivot? It means 2 things. So it has status in 2 different keys. That's cool. All right, so write that at the top of this handout so that when you come back to it, you'll know what we're talking about. We're talking about tonal areas, or tonicization that's kind of intermediate in this mid zone here, where you do get a predominant, dominant tonic. And then when you look at your sheet, you'll see those 2 progressions highlighted with your harmonic function there. Okay, so now we're going to look at another bridge, and you're going to have a chance to analyze it. Flip the sheet over and look for the bridge for Rogers' You Are Too Beautiful. And let's see how this works. Now, do you notice that often there are 9/8 or other kinds of suspensions going on? Now, so take a lesson from that. If the thing on the downbeat is often a suspension, you're going to have to look for the resolutions on the ands of beats, or usually it'll be like beat 2 and beat 4. So here too, the bridge starts in measure 2 of this example, where it says love does not stand sharing. Love is not a chord tone. Does is. Okay? So you've got to look past the downbeat and look at beat 2, and that's where the chord tones emerge. And that's going to happen again and again. Look past where the bass note shows up. Find the downward resolutions, and those are your chord tones. Are you with me there? Do you understand what I'm saying about that? Not really? Okay, suspensions are accent and dissonance, right? So they're going to happen on the strong beat. How do they resolve, suspensions? Down by step. Okay, so when they do that, in the score, you're going to see downward motion. Do you see that? From the strong beat to the weak? The word love? Love does. Okay, so where are the chord tones? Good. The F and the A are, but not the G and the B flat. Or B natural? B natural. The G and the B are not. So you can just ignore those when you try and figure out the chord. The chord is F, and so they're right about that. All right, now this piece is in C, so guess what? We've started off tonic, just like we expect bridges to. Now that's kind of odd that it's also a 4 chord, but that just happened to be. I didn't pick it for that reason. All right, let's listen a little bit to the beginning of this and see how it works, and I'll let you analyze a bit. Now that's kind of an interesting problem here. I think that E flat should be spelled as a D sharp. You see how I wrote that? I respelled it in there. I'd like you to take that as your cue. Now here you got a lot of dissonance on the downbeat, and so you got to look past it to there where the resolution happens. So watch out for that spot. the effect of the ending, that instability thing going on again. Okay, very similar. You want the bridge to start off tonic and go to the dominant and have that cliffhanger experience so that when you go back to the chorus 2 enters, you feel the return at that point. Okay, so now, I'd like you to look through here and talk to me about accidentals. Remember what we do? Review for me a little bit. Even when we're dealing with secondary dominants, what do those raising accidentals tell us?
The leading tone.
It's a leading tone. Now what you want to do is say, okay, I see a leading tone, so I think I'm tonicizing this. Can I find a dominant? But can I then also find a predominant that helps me tonicize whatever that is? Find me a leading tone and step me through this a little bit.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah. Or you can jump in anywhere, actually.
Is it D sharp?
Yeah, that D sharp, I sort of gave that away. I think of that as a B chord tonicizing E, so I'm just going to give that away. So cross out the C diminished up above. Cross it out entirely. Do you see the C moving downward? It's an appoggiatura. The real chord tone comes on beat 4. Remember that principle? Ignore the note on the down, on the strong beat, and see its resolution. So B is what I'm saying is the root. Does that work? Can you see how the other notes all fit within a B chord? So cross out that C dim, it's not C diminished, and put B, but then what is it? What's the quality of chord that you end up with?
B major.
B, D sharp, F sharp, plus there's one more note we have to account for. That's true, it is major, and it's triad. What kind of sevenths do we have? A, okay, so what's that make?
7.
B7, right, B7 up above. How do we show that B is not the bass?
Slash.
Good, slash over F sharp, right. Okay, so write that in there. F was right, they're good. C diminished, not so good. B7 over F sharp. I'll put it here. B7 over F sharp. Okay. And then does it resolve? Well, you know what happens? The seventh becomes the melody note at sharing. See how that works? So everything gets delayed, and the chord tone comes in a little later. See the G on B2? Share, ring. At ring, you get it. Okay, so it does resolve. What's funky, though? You expect B7 to go where? B7 is 5 of... that's where they think it goes, but...
To G.
No, think about this. B7 is 5 of what?
E.
E, yes. Okay. So, help me understand what they call a C chord. What's really the root? E is the root. So what's the C natural doing there? They made it look like a root. It's not. What is it really? It's not a seventh. E, G, B,
6.
You got a 6 in there. Now that's kind of crazy because it's a minor 6. So what are we going to have to do? We've got to add a minor 6 to this thing. But it's not an augmented chord. That's weird. That's hard to handle. Yeah, it is truly a flat 6. Normally you don't do this, but with a minor chord, and you've got, do you have the 5th? What's weird here is that you've got a minor E, G, and then you got the C. So you see why they had to go with C? But the sense of it is not that. It's more that we're adding, since it's irregular, I'm just going to write the word add a flat 6 in there. It's not an augmented triad. It's not. But, so I can't just do sharp 5 on that. It's a minor chord with a sharp 5. I could write that, I guess. Would that look weird though? You don't see that. E minor, sharp 5? I suppose that would work too. Sharp 5.
Well, a minor altered chord could have either a sharp 5 or a flat 5.
It could.
They
Let's go,
usually
let's
leave it
go.
up to
That
you.
would probably look a little more normal than flat 6. You just don't ever see flat 6.
Sharp 5.
Okay,
I've never
I'll
seen
go with
flat
this.
6.
Yeah,
I have seen sharp 5s before.
Yeah, but not flat 6, yeah. Okay, so we'll go with sharp 5. All right, that was a hard one to deal with. Okay, but we've got the root. It's E minor. Okay, find some leading tones for me. Let's go with this thought. Well, we already said this is a leading tone. Can we say that this D sharp? Okay, so it's a leading tone to E. Great. Can we back up and say this is predominant, dominant tonic in E minor? Can I do something with that? Would F work in the key of E? Not in a normal way, but what would it be?
Be a 9.
A flat 2. That's a little awkward to see that happening. That's called a Neapolitan chord. Have you heard of that? Usually they're Neapolitan 6. They're an inversion. So we could make it work. That's a little while, but we do have a predominant, dominant tonic. But what is E minor if we're in the key of C? So we got to think of all that as in the key of 3. Of 3. Get one that writes a little darker. Here we go. Of 3. Okay, so that's all 2, 5, 1, but it's a flat 2, 5, 1. All right, now go to the next thing. Find me an accidental that raises. How about a C sharp? Third measure, your example? Okay, talk out loud to me. What do you find? C sharp is a leading tone to D. Good. What's the chord above that C sharp? Is this 5 to 1? Jenna, what do you get? We got a couple. Jen Hinman, help me work through this one. Okay, you see a C sharp there? And we worked on this quite a bit. We've decided, hey, you know what? If I'm leading tone, it could be the root, a 7 chord, or it could be a third, chordal third, and a dominant. Do we have 5 of D or do we have 7 of D here? Jen, what do you see? What chord do you get? You stack all that stuff up. Yes. Do you have a 7th? No, at first I think it's not, but it becomes that, right? In your voice. It starts out as a B, and then it changes to B flat, so there is that change. Okay, so what is this chord? Starts out as full, as a half diminished and becomes fully all minor, second minor thirds, once the B flat comes in. Okay, so what do I write? It's a C sharp chord. Starts out as half, becomes fully diminished 7. What do I write here though for interpretation of it in the key? Think in D minor, what is it? 7, right. So in this case, the leading tone is the root.
What do we get?
So we write 7. We're viewing this as 7 of D minor because we saw the leading tone C sharp resolving to D. Now that's all old hat. What do we do now? What's the new thing we're doing today? We're going to ask one more question. What is it? Good. Work with me on that, David. So I back up. What comes before? Talk to me a little bit about what you see. Oh, skip that. Remember, we already did the work. Don't look at their symbol. We said it's E minor essentially.
Oh, I see.
Is there a 2 in D?
Ooh, good.
I mean, I know it's a 1 in that last thing, but it's also a 2 in the future thing.
Okay, so we're gonna rethink that. Well, we called it a 1, but that was in the context of 3. But we're gonna rethink of it as 2 and go, oh, here's a dominant,
Yeah, that's
predominant,
predominant.
tonic.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is predominant, dominant tonic motion, but we have to think in D, but we have to say of that in terms of a scale degree, or a Roman numeral. What is D in the key of C, our main key?
2.
2. So we'll say, oh, that's of 2. So we have a more substantive tonicization of D minor, which is 2 in C, and that's how we show it. We bracket it. Look for 251 or 271 in this bridge because it happens so much. Okay, find another accidental. I heard that. Yeah, there's a G. Good, Lauren. G sharp. You're in the second system, second measure? Good, that's right. Okay, talk to me about that. If I see a G sharp, it's probably a, when I see any raised note, it's probably a leading tone. So what are we tonicizing? G sharp is a leading tone too? A. Which is what in the big scheme?
6.
6. Okay, so we're probably tonicizing 6. All right, check it out. Just see what we've got there. Are they right? Is it an E7 chord?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so E7. So we do have a dominant going to its tonic. Now, what do we do that's new today?
I need to check if we're before it works.
Is it a predominant? Let's think of that. Then that what they call the D minor 6. We'll have to check that. See if that D minor 6 works as a predominant in A minor. Are they right? Is D the root? No, they're not right, so cross it out. What's the root? B is the bass now. All right, so give me the quality now so we can replace their symbol. B what? BDFA makes, it's a 7, yeah? That's normally a 7 chord, but what you're getting at the quality, right?
That'd be a
Half
D minor.
diminished, there you go. Yeah, so right, now I'm jumping ahead, so we're at have you been comparing? 'Cause that's where Lauren found this thing. And we're taking that D minor 6 symbol and saying forget that, change it, make it B half diminished 7. And we'll keep their E7 even though I know there's a little bit of some other added tones there, but we'll just go with that for speed. And now how do I interpret it? What's going on?
Are we in the same key?
We're calling that our 1 for the moment.
Okay.
We're saying we're tonicizing this. That works.
251.
Oh, yes. 2 half diminished 7. That's our 2 in the key of A minor. Okay, now what do I need to do to clarify its meaning in the bigger context? It's true that's in A minor, but overall we're in
251 and 6.
of 6. Good. 251 of 6. Good. It's sort of floating there, so I kind of want to back up and see what happened before that. Let's see, this was not if, and then at 1 they write a G7. Is that true?
Wait, why is it of 6? I'm sorry.
Oh, well, A minor is the thing we are thinking in right here.
Yeah.
But that's just a local event. Kind of like when you're dealing, I lost my,
But in what key are we thinking?
overall we're in C.
Oh, okay.
How much time do we have?
Oh, we're over time.
Oh, we're over? Oh, okay. Well, we'll leave it there. The main thing is that you see that now you have one extra thing to add to your arsenal. You've got to ask one more question. When I see a dominant of something, now back up and see, do I have a predominant dominant tonic of that something? And then use this bracket and write of whatever that thing is that you want to tonicizing. We're gonna use this a bunch. We're gonna incorporate this in our bridges. We're gonna see it in lots of different kinds of music. It's a cool tool to give more emphasis to that other key than you could have done before. So keep that in mind as you write and then also too as you analyze. Right, let me stop this thing and then you can hand me the assignment.